Various scenes, not everybody gets it.
Everybody, first projection competition of the season. First, a few announcements, like always. You want to hit one of the back lights there off? Let's see, give that a, yeah, hit one of those.
There we go.
Yep, hit the other one on the other side. There, perfect. Okay. First, some announcements. Upcoming meetings. July 29th, via Zoom presentation. Tim Gray. Excellent presentation. I've seen him talk before. He talks on night photography. This is not astrophotography. This is just general photographing at night, downtown scenes, just anything to do with photographing at night. So that'll be a Zoom presentation. The clubhouse will be open. Following August 5th will be our photojournalism, which is a projection. The deadline to submit your images for photojournalism are usually 48 hours before that Wednesday, just before. August 12th is our third competition of the season, creative competition, which will be a projection. The deadline is 12 days before. It is on the website, on the calendar, the exact day of the deadline. And on August 19th, we're going to have a Zoom presentation, which I read the bio, I've looked at his site. A very interesting presentation from John Martin for a case for black and white and travel photography. And he's traveled a lot. And a lot of the kind of classic scenes that we've seen or would have taken pictures of, we never thought of converting to black and white. And he has quite a few of these and gives an argument why some actually look better in black and white. I think it's just a very interesting presentation. Clubhouse will be open for that, and that is on August 19th. Upcoming field trips, August 7th, Lanterman's Mill and Fellows Garden field trip out to Youngstown area, the Botanical Gardens there, as well as Lanterman's Mill. And a new one just went on, August 8th, Goodyear Wingfoot Lake Base, where the blimp is stored. Don't know if the blimp is going to be in there at the time, but it's a really, really phenomenal structure and very, very interesting to photograph. I think there's a limit on number of people on that they put on us, but that is all on our website. So coming up August 8th. Items of interest not sponsored by CPS. The Great Lakes Medieval Fair starting July 23rd, 24th, and for several weeks afterwards on the weekends. So it's multiple weekends. August 13th to 14th, after a 2-year absence, the Hale Farm Civil War reenactment is back. It's the biggest in Ohio. Very interesting, a lot of photographic opportunities there. August 19th and 20th, Conneaut D-Day reenactment, always excellent out in Conneaut. That one is free completely, and they do a tremendous job. Again, tons of stuff to take pictures of. Photographically rich environment. August 27th, 28th, Great Trail Festival, another type of reenactment, but this is like the old days in the early times of the Americas. Pixel Photo Fest, which is coming up August 13th through 15th. Again, Pixel is nice enough to give us normally it's $169. They're giving a $100 discount for all CPS members, so it's only $69. It's a 3-day event with classes, speakers, workshops, photo walks, a lot of things out there. Field trip photo gallery, stick your pictures up there. Again, no contest, no worries. If we get more than 25 pictures, I send them out to a judge. It's really informal. But there have been a lot from some of the ones we've gone on, the Love and Lavender Fields, and it's just interesting to see what other people saw. So even if you have one picture you like or just a few, throw it up there. The links are on our website. It's on the CPS website under the gallery page. You'll see links for all the field trips. You can upload your pictures. And even if it was a previous field trip from the year before to the same place, we'd love to see it. The fall school enrollment is now underway. Fundamentals of Good Photography, great for beginners. Intro to Photoshop Photo Editing, Lightroom Classic. And for this, each new enrolling student, the winter and spring classes, will receive a $50 gift certificate from Pixel Connection for camera equipment as well. So if you're thinking of taking the course or wherever we're, these are also will be live streamed and you can watch them on demand at any time later. You get a syllabus. So great to think about. And this is an ideal time to sign up. All the information is on our website under the school tab. Fundamentals of Good Photography this next month is still having its virtual summer session where you could, again, no classes there, but you get all the live streamed links from the previous season, as well as the course material, and you can come back free to any future sessions to do any of the hands-on material. And of course, this and all of our meetings are streamed except for the Zoom ones, which you'll be able to watch eventually on a special members site. But all of these regular meetings are live streamed and on demand on YouTube, so check out our channel. And on that note, we are going to start off Bill Keaton for our first projection competition, our nature competition. And Bill is going to introduce give us something about the judges. This should have been, yeah, no. We will have their pictures up in just a second.
So welcome everyone to the nature competition, the first one of the year. I believe we had 108 images submitted for the competition. The judges will be commenting on all the nature images and the requested pictorial images, the images that anybody requested a comment on rather than a nature image. So we'll get started here in a couple seconds with the introduction of the three judges. Isn't it amazing how something was worse than 20 minutes ago? And now, technical difficulties.
The judges have stepped out for a minute. What we will do, not be able to find the judges.
Okay, I'll read
the description.
Okay.
Yeah.
Our judges tonight. First is Jerry Sheridan. Jerry Sheridan lives in Fort McDowell, Arizona, with his wife Stacy, 2 Airedale Terriers, and 3 horses. His backyard is the Sonoran Desert, where he enjoys riding through the Sahara cactus forest and photographing the brilliant desert beauty. He shoots large format monochrome, by that I mean an 8x10 Ju camera, almost exclusively, and processes all his negatives and prints in his own darkroom. He says the joy of photography for me is found in the process of exploring the Southwest, the contemplative nature of shooting with an 8x10, and the allure of a wet darkroom. He adds that a print worth mounting on your wall is just a cherry on top. He has been honored over the years by being one of 3 photographers selected to provide prints for exhibition in a national competition, winning several juried art shows, and has several prints hanging in a museum. Our next judge is Keith Blandford, who became interested and then immersed in photography 70 years ago. He was a yearbook photographer, then worked in a camera store after high school and experimented in photography going so far as mixing his own high-speed black and white and color developers. During his working and family-raising years, he did not shoot as much, but did stay involved working in other media. Retiring about 20 years ago, he was again bitten by the photo bug and started shooting, competing, teaching, judging, and exhibiting his work. Some behind-the-scenes shooting on student movie projects led to an interest in his favorite genre, street photography. Keith's work can be viewed at www.keithblanford.com. Our final judge for tonight is Tom Croce. Tom Croce is originally from the Cleveland area and currently runs a fine art photography business in southwestern Ohio. He earned a BEd degree from Miami University of Fine Art in 1984 and a Master of Architecture degree from Washington University, St. Louis in 1987. Tom is a freelance photographer with more than 30 years experience and has work published by National Geographic, Landscape Photography Magazine, and NAMPA Expressions 2016, a publication of the North American Nature Photographers Association, top 250 images. And our first image for the night . That's it.
Sometimes ambiguity or tension is good in an image, said the judge. In this case, I found looking at the head was confusing. I kept trying to make sense out of how the head was turned. Technically, it's good. Maybe a little less stark contrast with the background and some vignetting at the bottom would be better. I found my eye dragged down off the image to the bottom. The eye is penetrating and challenging my comments.
Bill Keaton. Bill Keaton, A Chilly Gaze, 20 points.
Tom says, I really love the feel of this image. It is well exposed and composed. I think adjusting the white balance to warm it up a little bit would help. I think it would have helped the image if the birds were located more to the right, so they were not merging with the trees.
Bob Kowaleski, After the Rain, 25 points, first place.
Love the majesty of the cliff and sky. You can feel the power of nature. The color saturation of the water distracted from the overall balance of the photograph.
Mike Kopkis, Alaskan Fjord, 21 points.
Keith said, the deer looking at me is the story. Painting is an additive art. Starting with a blank canvas, we add elements. But photography is the opposite. It is subtractive. We start with a scene that has too much and subtract until we tell the story. The top half is out of focus and contrasting, competing with the deer. It would be better to be cropped out. Also, the stick to the left of the deer's head, although small, draws my attention, looking at me. The deer is a great shot looking at me. I understand trying to create a context for the deer, but there is too much and it is distracting. I think out of focus things are more distracting than in focus.
Gary Marriage, Antelope Creek, Colorado, 20 points.
A very nice river scene, Tom says. Nice motion blur on the water, and I like the idea of trying to incorporate the strong foreground element in the frame. I think a stronger foreground element would have been the cascade lower left. In this case, I think positioning the camera so that the stream is almost flowing right into the camera would have created a very dynamic image by placing the viewer in a unique position. Sometimes you do have to get wet. It also looks like there is quite a bit of glare on the water. A polarizing filter would help remove a good deal of it.
Rich Foley, Babcock River, 22 points.
The highlights and tones and showdowns are well balanced. I would stop some or all of the foreground from the image. The rock has no features that contribute to the image.
Dennis Wirt, Blue Hen Falls, 21 points.
Keith said, this is a great shot. Good focus, good color, eye in focus, nice background. The shadow on the right side of the branch contributes to perspective. In composition, we want to control the viewer's eye, attract it to a spot and control it, moving around the image. A line leading off the image can take the eye off the image. I think the branch going off to the left does that. I saw the bird who was looking left and followed the branch left. Maybe it could be cropped off more or cropped off more on the left. Or maybe the branch could be faded, darkened, blurred, or gradually as it approaches the left. Just do something to stop my eye.
Gary Bloom, Bluebird, 22 points.
This is beautiful, Tom says. The composition is very nice. Using part of the plant as a background is a very good strategy. I love the contrast between the calla lily and the leaf background. One thing I would do is to burn the lighter green background leaf in the upper left corner. The leaf immediately behind the flower does look a little soft, as well as the upper edge of the flower. I often will shoot things like this with a macro lens f/22 or smaller and sharpen in Lightroom to correct for any diffraction. I also would have adjusted the composition just a bit by moving a little to camera right to avoid propping off the flower in the corner of the frame.
Chris Bosworth, Kayla Lilly, 22 points.
The candid nature of this image made it one of my favorite. Technically, it was done well using composition and depth of field to create a beautiful, fun photograph, says Jerry.
Joseph Miko, Camera Shy, 25 points, first place.
He said, this is an interesting shot. I had a problem knowing where to look. One goal of composition is to grab the eye where I'm looking first and keep control of where it looks. Initially, I saw the darker shape coming down from upper left and then wandered down and off the image. I tried cropping, keeping the top 2/3. Then my eyes stayed in the top, sort of going around in a circle. I think the top 2/3 is the most interesting part of this image.
Dennis Wirt, Canyon Colors, 23 points, third place.
Tom says, I love that you have captured the bee in the center of the flower and the shark. Compositionally, I think I might have tried to move camera right to try to get the center of the flower out of the center of the frame and possibly eliminate the white flower in the lower right corner. I think the image would have benefited from more depth of field, so the whole flower in the foreground was in focus. It also looks a little weird to me that there are parts of the flower or the front flower in focus and parts of the rear flower in focus, but the bud in between them is not in focus. Just looks a little unnatural.
Jane Sidney, Center Stage, 22 points.
Jerry says, nice capture of a fleeting moment. Love the muted colors. Good use of depth of field and camera correct. However, the out of focus stem in the background takes away from ability to bring your eye to the hunter.
Neil Limbaugh, Deep Dive, 24 points, second place.
He said, I think this could be more powerful. What if the moon is enlarged more and placed in the rule of thirds hotspot, the upper left spot? I like the simplicity of the composition. If the moon is in that upper left spot, it makes sense because the light is coming from the lower right.
Leslie Nutt, Eclipse, 19 points.
Beautiful bird getting an egret in their breeding plumage is always a treat, Tom said. The exposure looks good. Exposing for a white bird can be difficult, and you did a nice job not blowing out the highlights. I do think the background is too busy, especially where parts of the bird converge with the branches. Also, I tried to shoot wildlife at eye level, not looking up or down at too steep of an angle. When they are up in a tree like this, try moving farther away with a longer lens. Will help minimize the upward or downward angle.
Ronald Wilson, Egret breeding plumage, 21 points.
Just love the use of color and bokeh in this image. I have never seen a bird with such vibrant green color. I do find what is either the bird's leg or a twig under its tail feathers somewhat distracting on an otherwise nice, pleasing to the eye image. I would use another capture of this scene where the legs are in a more neutral position, if you have one, of course.
Belinda Prince, female honey creeper, 24 points, second place.
Keith said, colors and detail are well done in this image. My concern is this. Considering composition, usually the goal is to attract the viewer's eye to a certain spot and then control the eye movement, keeping it on the image. So we manage what is on the edges. When I look at this image, I see the center, top, and then leave the image at the bottom. My brain is asking where the rest of the image is. If I was playing with this image, I think I would have tried some vignetting at the bottom. The vignetting at the top and left is effective. Would it have worked at the bottom?
Ron Werman, fringe tulip, 18 points.
Tom says, very nice detail on the feathers and really nice background. I would prop this a bit to get the bird out of the center of the frame, leaving a little more space in front. My main thing is that I really wish the bird was facing the other direction toward the light, so its head and breast are lit rather than the back end.
Belinda Prince, golden hooded tanager, 22 points.
Often photographs are viewed with no sound implied. But as soon as I saw this image, I could hear the goose screaming. I also wanted to know what he or she is running from. Nice action shot using a fast shutter speed to freeze the action.
Ron Werman, goose attacking, 22 points.
Keith said, obviously the bird is a great shot, in focus, in motion, and the moon adds to the story. I think there is too much nothing on the left. My eye wanders around trying to find something else. I really think this could be cropped tighter and still have a good open space feel.
Gary Marich, great blue heron, Anastasia, Florida, 20 points.
These are very interesting animals with amazing horns, and you did a nice job of exposing to the highlights, Tom says. Generally, I try to avoid photographing animals later in the day where you run into problems with shadows from one part of their body being cast on another part of the body. If that's not possible, I will try to position myself with the sun at my back. On a more general note, I feel there is not a clear idea that the author was trying to express when they made this picture. What is it that makes this animal unique?
David Korosek, heads up, 21 points.
The use of color in this image is vibrant, but not overdone, as many photographers like to do these days. The use of shutter speed, aperture, and depth of field all work well to capture this moment in time.
Jay Joseph, In flight, 21 points.
Keith said, "This is a great shot. I would consider this. Try to avoid lines that take the viewer's eye off the page. I am led off at the bottom. What about vignetting at the bottom to lessen the stock contrast with the background? Just make that elements less in some way."
Dave Saborg, Iris, 24 points, second place.
This is nicely done, Tom says. The center of the plant and the spider are in sharp focus. The exposure and color look very good. I think there's a little problem with the depth of field. First off, I think I would like to see more depth of field so all the leaves of the plant were sharp.
Vicky Word, Itsy Bitsy Spider, 25 points, first place.
Jerry says, "I like the use of depth of field in this image to create a unique photograph. The use of pastel colors are muted just enough, which adds to the pleasant image. With all that is going right there, I do find the flower's stem somewhat unsettling. I'm not sure why. Perhaps it should be in focus, or perhaps it reminds me of a snake."
Susan Vestal, Jasmine, 21 points.
He said, "The viewer's eye is well controlled by the composition and vignetting. The detail is amazing. Without being able to try variations in this, I can't be sure. But I wonder if it is a bit oversaturated. Very interesting shot, though. It looks like the butterfly has big earphones on."
Marge Brady, Julia, Heliconian Butterfly, 24 points, second place.
Tom says this is a beautiful portrait of this bird, wonderful feather detail. Looks like there might be a few blown highlights in the beak and the worm. You got the catchlight in the eye, but the rest of the eye looks very dark. I think if you can lighten it up a bit, it will add some more life to the image.
Marge Brady, Lunch, 24 points, second place.
The image warranted some in-depth study as to what it was really showing. Only after enlarging it could it be determined that it was a mother feeding her two babies. To portray this, I would crop much of the bottom and a little more off the top out to accentuate the subject matter.
Eric Wethington, Mama Feeding Babies, 19 points.
Keith said, "Obviously, this is an amazing photo. I hesitate to make any suggestions. What about cropping a little more off the top to focus attention on the bird and shadow underneath? The shadow adds so much, and would vignetting also help control the viewer's eye and keep them on the page? This is awesome."
Bob Kowaleski, Mist, 24 points, second place.
This is a nice composition, Tom says. The pelican is in sharp focus and the background is nicely blurred. For this type of portrait, it would have been really benefited the author to shoot in better light. If that was not an option, I might have tried to shoot a series of details.
Gary Wood, Pass a Grill Pete, 23 points, third place.
Jerry says, "The use of color and depth of field make for a nice photograph. The flower itself is sharp. I would, however, more closely crop this image as the background distracts from the main subject. Doing so would greatly enhance this image."
Jane Sidney, A Perfect Summer Day, 19 points.
Keith said, "This is an awesome shot. Some of the grass stalks lead my eye off the page. Maybe some vignetting would manage that. and vignetting at the bottom would somewhat obscure the out of focus stuff. Out of focus areas can compete with an image. I think the brain wants to make sense out of blurred areas. I was curious about a dark version and dragged your image into Photoshop. I made a very dark image that is also powerful. Very versatile shot. P.S. I did not save your image.
Keith Marchand, Puma Cubs, 21 points.
Tom says this is a very nice image. I think you can see the ripples in the water created from this peak. The light is nice. It looks like morning or evening, and I like how you got down low and got a great perspective. Just really pay attention to your exposure. There are some blown highlights on the bird. I would also have located the bird further right in the frame, leaving more room on the left of the frame. Leaving a bit more space in front of the animal implies some motion, and in the case would have included more of the shadow.
James Kennedy, Seagull, a self-portrait, 23 points, third place.
This image is tack sharp and captures the essence of the feeding bird well. I'm not sure if the use of a white background adds to the overall viewing pleasure. It just seems somewhat sterile to me. I'd like to have seen a background with a nice bokeh.
Dave Suborg, Snow Bunting, 21 points.
This is an interesting image, said Keith. You can feel the wind blowing from the right. The bright stalk does lead my eye off the image at the bottom.
Eric Wethington, Somewhere in South Carolina, 19 points.
Tom says the hot springs in Yellowstone are amazing, and finding a perspective that hasn't been shot a million times is a challenge, especially when you are limited to where you can. I think the approach to something or someplace like this is to use a longer lens and pick out details, maybe along the edge where you get all the great shapes and colors, or maybe just the water bubbling up.
Leslie Nutt, Sulphur, 17 points.
Jerry says, what a unique image. I don't think I have ever seen a photograph from an environment like this. It created a scene where I wanted to see into all the details of the scene. The use of the saturated red color does distract from the overall aesthetics of the photograph. I would have liked to see it a little more muted.
Joanne Damien, Swamp of Louisiana, 23 points, third place.
Keith said, this is a great shot. The owl is staring at me. It is interesting how the rule of thirds upper left hotspot works. Does all the space on the right add? Does the long branch add anything? My eye is dragged down to the right and off the page where it is pointing. It competes with the two-bird action. It could be eliminated with Photoshop, but I am not sure that is better. Just a question.
Debbie Liskey, The Little Pest, 24 points, second place.
This is a wonderful picture, Tom says. The exposure is spot on, the depth of field is great, and the detail is just wonderful. I just wish it wasn't in the center of the frame. I would have placed it more to the left in the frame so there was more space on the right, creating a more dynamic image by implying a sense of movement.
Vicky Wirt, Vietnamese Mossy Frog, 25 points, first place.
The use of camera craft is evident in this image. It is very sharp in areas where it should be, and the long shutter speed creates the smooth flowing water we enjoy looking at. Cropping the foreground may add to the overall depiction of the scene. The rock rushing water on the right and brightly colored leaves, flower in the bottom. The scene take the eye away from the main subject, the waterfall.
David Grimmer, Waterfall at Brickett's Glen, 23 points, third place.
He said, this is certainly a powerful image. There are two stories, the horse and mountains, and they sort of compete in my head. I wonder if there should be less mountains to focus more on the horse. The horse is the story in the context of the mountains. I would consider not centering the horse. Maybe eliminate some of the right side, leaving space on the left for the horse's continuing journey.
Keith Marchand, Wild Horse, 24 points, second place.
I really love what I think you were trying to do here, Tom said. The yellow edge and the texture of the petal is beautiful. I really like trying to focus on just that simple, beautiful edge. I just think you need to get much closer so it fills the majority of the frame. And it's unmistakable that that is the subject. If your equipment is limiting how close you can get, try some extension tubes.
Mike Kopkis, Wildflower, 20 points.
Jerry says, oftentimes photographers overuse color when photographing images of flowers, but not in this case. The use of color, cropping, depth of field, and critical sharpness work well, and together to create an image you can almost smell.
Dan Hennessy, A Pretty Lily, 22 points.
Keith said, this is an outstanding image from every point of view. I'm viewing it on an ISO monitor and it is coming to life. Details, color, etc. all are perfect.
Chris Bosworth, Amaryllis, 22 points.
Tom says, very nice close-up. The composition exposure looks very good. I would do some burning in on the leaves with glare, or tried shooting with a polarizing filter.
Neil Leinbach, Buttonbush Dawn, 22 points.
The ability to capture a ramp such as this has to be applauded. You need the equipment to take such a photograph and the knowledge, ability, and patience to make it all work together. He is not the most handsome of subjects, but you made a unique image. What is he yelling at?
David Grimmer, Call of the Wild, 24 points, second place.
He said, the dragonfly is excellent and is the story. It shows off well against the flower. Its shadow gives depth. I think the shot would be improved by cropping out the out of focus part on the right. Out of focus areas are distracting, and this thing leads the viewer off the shot. It is an arrow pointing off to the right.
Gary Bloom, Dragonfly on a Hibiscus, 20 points.
This is a cool shot, Tom says. I really like all the textures and lines. Shooting it in even light would have helped emphasize those two elements. I also think it needs much more depth of field, either a much smaller aperture like f/22, or maybe focus stack a series to get the required depth of field.
Susan Bestel, Dwarf Canna Lily, 21 points.
There is nothing like a primate with a young to capture the imagination of her cousins, us humans. The image is tack sharp, nice use of depth of field to isolate them, and colors are pleasing. The blur on the lower right is a little distracting, but understand not much can be done to eliminate it.
Debbie Liskey, Mommy and Me, 24 points, second place.
He said, this is an outstanding image. Crisp, colorful, well composed. I think I can touch it and feel its feathers. The drop of water on the bill makes it seem alive. Well done. I love the subtle reflection at the bottom. Perfect depth of field.
Ben Collins, Portrait of a Smew, which is a small waterfowl in Northern Europe and Asia. 24 points, second place.
Tom says this is a really nice shot of the bird. The bird is nicely exposed, there's good detail on the feathers, and the catch light in the eye really brings the bird to life. The depth of field works well, but the background is just too bright, and the two tree trunks take away from this beautiful shot of the bird. It looks like if you could have moved a bit to camera left, the background looks a bit darker with less bright highlights.
Joseph Miko, Red-tailed Hawk, 24 points, second place.
I really like this image, although I am in a quandary as to why. It is not exceptionally sharp, the use of brown tones is somewhat overdone, and there are distracting spots in the lighter areas. Perhaps it looks like an image taken on film that pleases my senses.
Mick Russo, Robin at Dusk, 20 points.
Keith said, "This is a very good image. It seems to me the most interesting part is the twisted roots in the middle, and I would try to keep the viewer's attention to that part of the image. I would consider vignetting more on the right and at the bottom to keep the viewer from drifting off the image at the bottom and bottom left. Should upper and middle left be a little darker?"
David Korosek, Rooted, 19 points.
This bird is tack sharp, Tom says, but unfortunately the lighting isn't working for you. The dark shadows under its wing and tail are too strong, and any detail is lost in the shadow. These are very beautiful birds, but the upward angle and showing the underside of the animal are not very prominent. There are times when there is a compelling reason to shoot from an upward-looking perspective, perhaps the formation of a large flock or a bird coming in for a landing.
Ronald Wilson, Roseate Spoonbill Landing, 21 points.
Snakes. Why does it have to be snakes? Quote from a movie. The excellent use of light, color, and sharpness all combine to make a beautifully unique image of a subject that brings out emotions in many of us.
Bill Keaton, The Serpent, 24 points, second place.
Keith said, "My first reaction was a laugh. The bird's just laying there, chilling out, eyes closed, not a care in the world. Very sharp, good example of telling a story."
James Kennedy, Time Out to Catch a Few Rays, 23 points, third place.
Tom says, nice shot of the tree swallow taking off. Your exposure looks spot on with no blown highlights with nice detail on the bird. Again, the background is too busy. Maybe burning in the tree and darkening the background would help.
Gary Wood, Tree Sallow Launch, 23 points, third place.
Most who photograph the image of flowers choose the most beautiful of subjects. What makes the hairy budding flower unique are the use of color and the use of a pleasing bokeh. I would crop it a little tighter to isolate the bud.
Maria Diaconu, Wildflower, 20 points.
He said, "This is a very good shot. Does there need to be this much of the pond and weeds? It seems to me that it all overpowers the duck because there is so much and/or the yellow-green is so intense. The duck's intense and varied colors are amazing. The background seems to compete rather than be a setting for the duck."
Rich Foley, Wood Duck, 22 points. And that concludes our nature portion. I think what we'll do is we'll take a 5-minute break before starting the pictorial.
How are you?
Good. I've got
What's your water?
okay.
There's a place on the road.
Tried to mold it.
Yeah.
Photo shoot. So I'm ready for this. Basically, the two reasons. One, I wanted to and second, that's not what I had bought.
That's around.
Which road? Enjoy it.
3 judges. And
So
yeah. One judge for
How I like it. It's like
Still have those prior and somebody showed luggage.
Yeah, the fishing. And of course, the right. So I tried, got up to full brain, but I told me. And I only had it as a choice.
yeah.
And I liked it. I really wanted to go. So I wanted to sell all of my I help out. So unfortunately, I struggle with it. But I just help. Well, I like, I'd like to make it a map. It's got it.
Version rangefinder stuff.
Well, it's.
XXCs or because you're viewfinder.
How do you read this?
Oh, XT, I'm sorry.
Here to start our pictorial.
You look familiar. I'm sure I've probably seen you from the start. So I'd like to get the next 4 because it's got access. But it's by the price, but if they don't come out with.
Okay.
I might be dead by then.
So these are our pictorials for the night. The first 2 will not have comments. This is Dan Hennessy, a wooden eagle, 20 points. Maria Diaconu, After Rain, 21 points.
Tom says, one of my favorite black and white landscape photographers is Clyde Butcher. One of his sayings is, the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. I feel there are too many things going on here. Lower half of the image with the path of the water, there are waves in the middle and the sky in the upper half. The lower half of the image is quite nice. I might try cropping off about 3/4 of the sky, and that would bring a lot more emphasis on the beach and that wonderful streak of water.
Jim Rowe, After the Storm, 18 points. Dan Hennessy, Alien Planets, 18 points. Maria Diaconu, Alps Mountains, 21 points. Rick Mills, Angela, 22 points, honorable mention. Graham Stead, Clouds on Impact, 21 points. David Korosek, Coast Guard Station, 18 points. Neil Limbaugh, Flight Path, 19 points. Mick Russo, Flowers That Bloom in the Spring, 19 points. Barb Cerrito, Border Collie, 22 points, honorable mention. Ronald Wilson, Hoop Dancer, 22 points, honorable mention. Jackie Sayuski, Masquerade, 25 points, second place. Susan Vestal, Midsummer Night's Dream, 24 points, third place. James Kennedy, Morning Workout, 22 points, honorable mention. Jim Rowe, Modeled by the Sun, 20 points. Graham Stead, Music and Architecture, 20 points. David Grimmer, Night Sky at Bath Harbor Lighthouse, 26 points, first place. Joe DiStefano, Oregon Coast, 19 points. Mick Russo, Owl Watching in Black and White, 20 points. Jackie Sayuski, Parisian Dreams, 22 points, honorable mention. Rick Mills, River Rapid, 18 points. Gary Wood, Rosie Afternoon, 21 points. Mary Kay Talarico, Severance Window, 21 points. Mary Kay Talarico, Street Musician, 25 points, second place. Joanne Damien, Swamp of Louisiana 2, 26 points, first place. Joseph Miko, Tulip, That's Past His Prime, 22 points, honorable mention. Bill Keaton, Venus Rising, 24 points, third place. Debbie Lithke, Where is Everyone? 23 points, honorable mention. Barb Dorito, Yankee Doodle Doggy, 23 points, honorable mention. Rich Foley, Yes, I'm this cute, 24 points, third place. Jay Joseph, Zoo Lights, 19 points.
Love the subtle but vibrant use of color and depth of field. This pleasing image makes you wonder who is watching whom. To accentuate the main subject just a little more, I would crop, not too much, just some from the top and right side of the image.
Dave Saborik, Cape May Warbler, 21 points.
I have good memories of sitting by a lake just like this. The photo invites recollections. Would it be better to be a black and white shot? It looks like part is black and white and part is sort of colored. That is a little confusing and interferes with my story.
Jane Sidney, Contemplation, 20 points.
Tom says, really nice job with the exposure, lots of great detail on the fur. I'm a little confused by the message. Is it a nice picture of a beautiful animal? Or is it saying something about the living conditions or animals in captivity in general? If it's about the animal, then the background is too busy. and him or her sitting on cardboard makes it impossible for this to look natural. I would have tried a head and shoulders shot. If it's a commentary, I would have included more of the enclosure and the conditions, maybe shooting through the bars of the enclosure.
Marge Brady, Deep in Thought, 24 points, third place.
Jerry says, the majesty of Mother Nature is captured in this image. Like most spectacular landscape images, they depend on having clouds, magnificent clouds, and of course, the use of good composition and color help make this for a nice image. Perhaps cropping a bit of the foreground and darkening the bare rock would take away from this distracting part of the photograph.
Dennis Wirt, Dolomite Day, 23 points, honorable mention.
He said, this brings back good memories of evenings in California. My first reaction was that there should be more shown of the beach. But then I got involved in finding people on the beach and in the ocean and the lights in the pier, and that gave life to the shot.
Jim Rowe, Fire in the Sky, 20 points.
Tom says this is a cool shot. I like the high key effect of the water and the composition. The color seems a little washed out on the crane. The wood duck really isn't helping you. I think the picture needs to be just about the crane. I would also crop it to a portrait orientation.
Mary Kay Talarico, Friends, 20 points.
Photographs of birds of prey always catch the eye. The composition of this image is well done with the mountains in the distance and branches. It's interesting as the subject is itself. The hawk does seem either highly cropped or slightly out.
Gary Marriage, Golden Eagle, Steamboat Springs, Colorado, 20 points.
He said, this is technically good, sharp and colorful. I assume that this is World War II memorabilia and that it is important to me. It certainly tells that story with the contrast of the guns and the babe, Helena.
Rick Mills, Helena, 22 points, honorable mention.
Tom says, I love all the patterns, textures, and shapes. The light is also very nice. The decision to use a fast shutter speed to freeze a motion works well to express the power of the water. Depending on the structure of the dam, I might have included the rest of the walkway in that last pier. But again, this is a very nice image.
Mike Kopkis, Hydropower, 21 points.
Who doesn't like an image of a sleeping koala bear? Nice shot, especially with the main subject sharp and the blur of the foliage. This helps bring the viewer's eye to the main subject.
Eric Wethington, Koala Bear Sleeping, 20 points.
He said, this is a perfect image. The colors are spot on. The reflection is amazing. Subtle vignetting keeps the eye on the image. Outstanding work. Everything is in focus.
Vicky Wirt, Lily Reflection, 23 points, honorable mention.
Tom says this is a very interesting portrait. The composition is really interesting. She seems to belong. I think if you had rotated her shoulders toward the light, it would have opened up the dark area between her arms. It looks like there is a lot of detail on the dress that gets lost in the shadows. I would also lower her head tilt a bit so we're not looking up her nose. I think the background is nice, but the bright areas in the windows and the ceiling coffers take away from the overall impact of the image. One last nit, if you're going to do symmetry, you need to really do it.
Jackie Siuski, Palmer Hotel Glamour, 22 points, honorable mention.
This is one beautiful image. Masterful use of proper photography techniques, especially the sharpness of the photograph from foreground to the distant mountains, creates a beautiful image. I played with cropping out some of the foreground, including the rock in the middle. A master photographer has taught me to watch the corners. The foreground corners are empty space and creates a distraction from the main subject.
Belinda Prince, reaching out, 23 points, honorable mention.
Keith said this is an interesting shot. I understand including the lake shoreline explains the image, but I wonder if it is distracting. Usually we would avoid putting important things on the edge of images because we want the viewer to see the main stuff. I think I would have excluded this and let the viewer figure out that it is a reflection.
J. Joseph, reflection, 20 points.
What an amazing space, Tom says. The detail on the proscenium and its ceiling is beautiful. I think the different colors created by the different types of light is very interesting, although I'm not sure the architect or lighting designer would agree. I don't think the framing elements in the upper corners are helping you. I would have much rather seen more of that wonderful ceiling and walls. If you're going to do symmetry, you really need to be spot on. You're a bit right of center, so if you had moved a few feet to the left, it would have taken care of it. Your verticals are vertical, which is critical.
Joe DiStefano, Severance Hall Panorama, 20 points.
The sharpness of this photograph with its vibrant metallic colors is what first catches the viewer's eye. The reflections also create unique detail. The blue body in the foreground creates empty space that detracts from the other elements in this image.
Ron Werman, Side View Mirror, 20 points.
He said, amazing. Everything about it is perfect, I think. Obviously, the details and color and focus aren't perfect. The story is clear. There are details to discover, such as the heart on the fingernail. Well done.
Barb Cerrito, The Look of Love, 25 points, second place.
Tom says this is a nice picture of Rock House, beautiful texture and color on the stone. I think you handled the shadows very well. Most pictures of Rock House they try to make the shadows too light, so I appreciate how you held the shadows. Overall, a nice job.
Bob Kowaleski, The Rock House, 24 points, third place.
Jerry says, this photograph instantly allows the viewer to feel the cold, crisp air and hear the soft crunch of the snow under his feet. Only a well-crafted image will do this. The muted colors of the foliage in contrast with the red jacket make the whole scene come together.
Graham's Dead, Walker, 20 points. And that concludes our pictorial images for this evening. So we thank you all for coming and entering the competition.
What?